starting. It says I'm live. Hey, hey. So, this is my second live on Substack. First one was unscripted, didn't know what I was going to talk about. Today, I actually know what I'm going to talk about because I just got off a mentor call, and she has been encouraging me to tell my story. Tell it written, tell it on social media, YouTube, whatever. And so, while it's fresh in my head, this is actually a test run in video format of my story that I've already written out. Of course, I've lived it, I know it. But my story is how I got to be in this work. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a sex and trauma therapist, somatic sex and trauma therapist. And how I got to the somatic piece is really a big part of my story. So, I spent 20 years as a holistic practitioner, specifically focused on massage, but my training was also in herbs, energy work, nutrition. I have a certificate in nutrition that I acquired along the way, so lots of certifications along the way. But anyway, so my early adulthood was around holism, helping people feel better. I was interested in health and wellness. And as I started aging, I realized I physically can't keep up with doing the manual work of massage, so then I transitioned into the mental health space. But what I took with me was knowledge that people's lived experience is in their body. There was a thing when we were a massage therapist, we would call it issues in the tissues. You could be massaging someone's back or their leg or their head, and all of a sudden they might start crying or they might start laughing, and sometimes even they didn't even know why. And so we assured them that we may have hit something that was held in the fascia, in the tissues. A little side note, I'm in a 2-year neuroscience program, and we are actually learning that while the body holds some, let's say, unprocessed emotional tension, we're also learning some of our trauma responses are based on prediction error. So, more to come on that. This isn't a science lesson. I'll continue talking about my story. And so I took into mental health the understanding that the mind and the body are not separate. I knew I would not just be a cognitive therapist, because you can talk and talk and talk and only go so far. I've even had people who don't believe in therapy. They say, the therapist is just going to tell me something that I already know. It's not what therapy's about. But I took with me an understanding that we're not just going to talk to people. We need to involve the body-mind. So as I transitioned into mental health, I did sex therapy education, I did imago training, I did trauma training, I'm now on a neuroscience track. But I put all of that together to be the kind of therapist who knows that sometimes we need support from an outsider, someone who's outside of our experience, because you need your friends, you need your family, that's subjective, but you need someone who's outside of your experience to give you an objective view and also to give you objective support. Now, parallel to this in my journey, in our personal life, my partner had a medical situation. He's fine. But in that, and I've written about this here on Substack, you can have medical issues, surgeries, illnesses that impact the sexual dynamic in a couple. And I find that medical professionals talk about the injury and recovery. Mental health professionals talk about your feelings about it. But what about that space in between where our erotic life has been affected by what has happened? And so when that happened to us, we tried to find proper supportive counseling, and it was very difficult. Funny story, when we did find someone who was really bad at it, he ended up crying in the session, and I would give him counsel, and I was only a student myself. So anyways, what that did was it instilled in me a desire to be the person I couldn't find. I wanted to be the person where people could go and talk about intimate things, intimate struggles. Um, when you enter into a relationship, you're young and you're spry and you're healthy, you don't often think, what if something happens and how this will impact our erotic life until it actually happens. And you could prepare for it all day long, but until you're in it, you don't know. Okay, so that was one trajectory. One thing that happened that set me on my current trajectory is I want people to have a space to talk about these intimate issues. And then, as I graduated at the age of 50 and started my second career, I was working at these clinics and I got really good, built up a nice roster of people that I was working with. But one of the clinics that I worked with had this policy. They had this policy that if you're working with a patient and they become unstable in the arena of suicidality, if you're working with them, you take the intake, maybe they had suicidality in their past, or maybe you see that they're traumatized or depressed or whatever. So obviously they're not well. But if at any point they start trending towards suicidality or attempted, we had to terminate working with them immediately and refer them. Thinking you're probably having thoughts before therapeutic relationships that tremendously impacted me. And I said, this is against my professional ethics. When a person is unstable and they're trending more unstable, that is the very moment they need the continuity of the caring other that they have developed a relationship with. But of course, if there's no one there, having someone, anyone, is good. But when you already have an established relationship and you have to sever that when you need the person most, that really, really struck a nerve. And that has become a core baseline value in my company, in my business, in how I work with people, is the support. First, the intimacy support that I found was greatly lacking, and then the emotional nervous system support that I still find greatly lacking in many therapeutic spaces. But it is the backbone. When you come into my field and you start working with me, you get my support. Until we reach a point where I can no longer support you, I will refer you out. Or even better yet, when you reach a point that your self-leadership is on point, you know how to get help when you need it. You know how to make the decisions. You know how to process your emotions. You know how to go inward and listen to the wisdom of your soul to guide you. That's the trajectory of healing. So I went on today to give a couple elements of my story that talk about how I got to where I am today. I am a big believer in anyone who wants to resume or deepen their experience of pleasure, because pleasure is your birthright. And sometimes we run into obstacles, either partner obstacles, medical obstacles, physical obstacles, lack of education obstacles. I wanted to be the person to help someone navigate through all of that. So there's the intimacy support, trauma support, life support. These are all the arenas that I offer support. So if you want to know how to work with me, I have some free spaces. I have a book. I have a recorded program for women. I have a live program, a tantra program in the fall. You can work with me one-to-one. Just leave a message here on Substack. DM me. And I'm creating something really, really cool. I'm creating a space where we can have these kinds of conversations where, excuse me, people can safely ask dating questions, relationship questions, healing questions, pleasure questions. That is my dream. And it's coming. But in the meantime, if you would like to work with me, just DM me. Thank you for being here. And if you're watching this on the replay, thank you for taking a slice out of your day to listen to my story.